Magnus Carlsen is unmatched when it comes to endgame technique. In this battle, his rook works overtime, cutting off the activity of the opponent, switching the sides, and slowly wreaking havoc until the position collapses. A masterclass in how to handle the rook in the endgame. So, Magnus Carlsen has white pieces and black is international master Ilan Schneider. So, the position currently is quite complex. It's a middle game one. But slowly we will see how it goes into the end game, and then Magnus shows his true skills. So let's try to understand this a bit further. The material is equal. Black has the double bishop advantage. Black has this knight well placed on f4. Black's pawn structure is not that great, so quite an imbalance is there in the position. So in this position, Magnus decides that all right, before creating any sort of activity, by the way, don't go for this queen a5 type of moves, otherwise bishop b4 check and you might lose the game. So before starting with any activity, let's just make the king safe. So he castles on the queen side, although this semi-open file is there, but that is not enough for Ilan to create activity. So he goes for the move bishop takes c4. He's like, all right, let's eliminate this active knight of Carlsen. Then he goes for rook d8. He doesn't want Carlsen to create activity from the d file. So now Carlsen is like, all right, I'm ready to go into the end game, and then we'll see. So queen takes d8, queen takes d8, rook takes d8, king takes d8 gets played. Now the pawn is being attacked, so Carlsen is like, all right, I can either defend it by playing something like this, or I can. Oh, by the way, one important point, there is not like rook d1, king e7, rook d2, because there will be bishop e3. So Magnus has to decide what to do. So he's like, all right, let's eliminate that that knight. So now g takes f4 gets played. So there's another problem. Now there is this semi-open file. So Ilan can play rook g8 and then put pressure on this. So first of all, Magnus needs to stabilize that and then create his activity. So he goes for the move rook e1. Why not rook d1? Because we already know after rook d1, king e7. At some point, if he goes for rook d2, then there will be bishop e3. And then after rook d1 check, king e7, there can be this threat of bishop e3 check and then rook g8 as well. So his first task is to defend that pawn properly. So he goes for rook e1. He's like, okay, right now, my task is to defend the pawn and I will do it properly by putting my rook on light square. So that bishop won't be that much effective. So then Ilan plays the move king e7. Magnus plays the move c3. So he's like, all right, maybe I can play b4. I can gain some space. Of course, this bishop e3 type of ideas are there, but Magnus is holding the position together actually. So then a5 is played in this position. Now b4 is not possible, but Carlsen is not worried. He improves the king's position. Of course, it's an endgame, so he must keep the king active. And he's like, all right, if you're putting too much pressure on the king side, I might at some point even shift the king on the king side, on the queen side, and then try to put pressure on this pawn and then create some activity. So Ilan plays the move a4. He's like, I don't want that king to get active. So Carlsen goes for the move b4. A takes b3 gets played. A takes b3. Now it seems like, wait. Carlsen is ready to give the create that open a file and give it to his opponent. Yes, because he knows that black won't be able to do much with that open file. So, but black brings the rook there. Magnus is not worried. He's like, I'll be on my task and try to restrict this bishop. Now, if the rooks are exchanged, say by playing rook a2, king d3, rook e2. So now the problem what will happen for Ilan is that, so he's not able to create much activity on the king side despite having the pawn majority. And then there can be this knight h4, knight f5, that knight can get on the outpost square. And then this queen side pawn majority can do something, or even that king in future can get active. So yeah, he is. So that's why Ilan is not interested in exchanging the rook. So bishop e3 gets played, getting the bishop on the outpost square. But that's the thing, Magnus knows that on the dark squares, that this bishop is on the outpost square, that pawn is on f4. So what he's trying to do, he's trying to play on light squares. So Ilan can't do much with those pawns and the bishop. So he goes for the move knight h4. He's like, you brought your bishop on the outpost square. I will try to do the same with my knight. I'll bring it on the outpost square and try to eliminate this bishop and win a pawn. So then king e6 gets played. Knight f5 was played in this position. Bishop g1. So now, in this position, Carlsen plays the move c5. So the plan is that he's gaining more space. On the queen side, he has the pawn. He's not going to play c4, b5 right now. This will fall. No, but he's just trying to restrict black's activity. And there is also another idea. What is that idea? We'll see. So rook a2 check was played by Ilan. Actually, Carlsen was one of the other ideas of c5 was to bring the king to c4 via d3. That king will be quite active, and then maybe in future there can be some ideas like this, and king can get even more active. So Ilan plays the move rook a2 check, and that helps Carlsen because anyway he was actually going to bring the king to d3. So king d3 gets played. Now, before we look at the rest of the game, I have a small announcement to make. So it is regarding chessneurons.com. So we are soon coming up with the feature of courses. Already some of the courses are prepared, and the other ones are getting prepared by me. So it will be on different topics. We'll try to deep dive into that and try to increase your knowledge. Now, if you want me to cover some specific topic in the course, something that you would feel that would be useful for you, then please feel free to mention it in the comments. And please remember to check out chessneurons.com. It will help you significantly in improving your positional chess, and we have a 7-day free trial available as well. So let's get back to the game. Here, Ilan decides that exchanging the rooks won't be that great of an idea because his king is restricted. Yes, this bishop is there, but it's not able to do much. This knight is on the outpost square. So Carlsen can have this king c4, b5 type of ideas, or even trying to bring the king. So it will be difficult for Ilan to keep both king side and queen side defended. So he goes for the move rook a3. Carlsen decides to improve the king's position. Then rook a1 gets played. And from here onwards, we are going to see the use of the rook by Carlsen. So next 8 moves of Carlsen are going to be of the rook, and each and every move with a clear objective. So first, he gets the rook on the open file. Then Ilan in this position plays the move bishop e3. Now, say for example, if he had played the move rook e1, so this would have been a better idea at least because there is some pressure over this. Then I think Magnus, so because there is no rook d8, he cannot sacrifice the pawn because this will go with a check and then the knight will go. So what he might need to do is he might need to play king d3, and then maybe say for example there can be rook a2 ideas and then something, and then if rook a1 is played, then I think you would have tried something like king e2, try to cover the square and then do something. So you would still have some advantage chances, but it might have been better because the king would not be as active. But in this position, Ilan decides that all right, I'll play bishop e3 in this position, bring the bishop on the outpost square. But Magnus was trying to improve the rook's position, so he's like, all right, I will bring my rook on d8. And then Ilan plays the move rook c1. So he's saying, you want to move the rook, you do it, but I will play bishop d2 when the rook moves, and then I'll put pressure over here. So Magnus is like, challenge accepted. And then he plays the move rook e8 check. Now, Ilan played the move king f7, and we'll see what happens after that. But what if he had played king d7? So the move in this position is rook e7 check. If king d8 gets played, then there is rook takes h7. If bishop d2 is played, no worries, king d3, because now Carlsen has got this pass pawn. And if bishop takes here, then there is knight e7 idea as well. This will go with a check. And if king d7 right now, then knight d5, and this will go. So yeah, this is bad. So king d7 also wouldn't be that helpful for Ilan. So rook d8, rook e8 check was played, king f7. Magnus is like, all right, rook e7 check, king f8. He takes this pawn. Now Ilan plays bishop d2. That was his plan. But then the point is, the pawn falls, and it's not just about a pawn. It's about the squares that pawn was controlling. Basically, the king can get on one of these squares, and now Magnus Carlsen has actually. So he is still like, okay, if you had played rook takes e3 check, And then I would move the king, but bishop takes c3, I don't think I'll move the king. I'll take another pawn of yours. And then king g8 gets played. Now, he once again makes a move with the rook. He plays the move rook b6. He's like, yeah, there is discovered check, but what will he do with it? Where will the bishop go? So, and then Ellen plays the move rook c2. By the way, 8 moves of the rook that I was talking about, they are now over. And the position has completely collapsed for black, because Carlsen is not only 2 pawns up, he has these connected pass pawns. And then he played king d3, he pushed this pawn, and then rook b7. So he didn't blunder the pawn, Ellen took the pawn, but then there was knight e7 check, and this rook will be lost. So an extremely instructive game of Magnus Carlsen of how to skillfully make use of the rook in the endgame and outplay the opponent. Thanks everyone for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.